Once everything gets quieter and more open and more spacious, then it's like this idea of even having a body dissolves. And it feels like there's just this open vastness. It's immeasurable. So maybe what feels relevant for me to talk about is I've been reading one of Ramana's books. And what I love about it is that it's just such a clear, direct, and actually very simple transmission from him about self-inquiry. And I love hearing it from his words. It's basically just turning the subject onto itself with this question of, who am I? And he explains it so well that it's really about using that question to suspend thoughts, to have the subject turn onto itself, find the source of your mind, find the source of all these thoughts, and then to just keep your attention there. And naturally, in doing that, what I find is that the thoughts themselves dissipate. There's this dissolving that I experience, and everything gets really quiet internally.
I'm really curious about these words. Find the source of your mind.
What I discover is nothing. Yeah, it's just quiet, open, spacious, and it's dynamic. There's energy that moves, and there's an experience that's shifting and changing, and emotions pass through, and sensations pass through. But actually, what he's calling source, my experience is that all of that is happening in this background of open, empty space. There's nothing.
I'm noticing as I'm hearing you talk about this that on one hand, I really know what you're talking about, this open space. And at a cognitive level, I'm feeling confusion about like, wow, how do I find the source of my mind? What does that mean?
It's great because in this book, people come and ask him these questions, trying to really understand it in that way. And he just points them back to who's the one that is asking the question, who's the one that wants the answer. And so again, it's right back to turning the subject onto itself. And so for someone like me who can be very mental and I do want to know, I have this desire to get the right answer and figure it out, that can bring up fear of not knowing, of not getting it right. For me, actually, it also brings up this deep-seated belief that there's something wrong with me, that I can't get it, I can't do it, I'm deficient in some way. And so that's all part of the inquiry, to actually shine the light on that and let that be here. Let the emotions be here. Let these self-beliefs that come from childhood be here, and to not move. And same thing, it all dissolves and dissipates. And what's left is empty, open space. There's nothing.
Yes, as you're speaking about it, I'm experiencing in real time that for me, the confusion brings up a sense of struggle and like a struggle to figure it out and to find out and to do it just the right way. And this is a familiar struggle for me. It's like I hear about something that I want and that I know is so beautiful and loving and wonderful. And then there's this like energy of like trying to slide tackle it to the ground and get it and achieve something so I can have it for myself.
So, what was your experience just now when that struggle came up?
Well, what really comes up is like attachment, wanting to get something, and the sense that I definitely don't have it right now because I'm struggling and I'm annoyed about that and a bit flustered.
And what happens if you totally let that be here without trying to change it or make it different in any way?
Yes. Yes. I noticed that the momentum of the struggle is to observe this sense of I'm struggling. I want something, I don't have it. And then to put more energy into the struggle and a continuous loop. It's like a hamster wheel that will never end, that seems to never end. And yes, is the word. There's an experience of witnessing this reaction and pattern, and the words that come are, it's okay, it's not everything. And this is why I really resonate when you said, who is the one who is doing something, looking for something? Who is the one who doesn't have? This really opens my lens of perception to myself.
And what do you find?
I find that there's choice here. There's options more than there seemed to be before. Options to continue this struggle and suffer in it. I'm laughing because it's such a familiar choice that for a long time I made unconsciously. And there's also an option, there's a world of options. I could do anything, and I could also surrender. I can rest. This one who feels like she needs to do so much actually is free to do anything or not do anything. And this sense of struggle, then, it's not what it seems. The world is bigger than just that.
I'd love to hear more about what you mean when you say that.
Tenderness shows up. It's like there's like almost like a tickle of vulnerability, or what vulnerability is really the only word I have in English for this feeling. No, tenderness is another word. Tenderness, natural softness that doesn't require anything to be done about it. A sense of clarity that takes care of what seemed to need attachment before. And it really is about, who am I? You know, this question, who is the one who is struggling? Who is the one who is doing something? It turns attention back on myself. And the question assumes no prior knowing. And so I can find out, I can check out, I can wonder, who is this one? And just the energy of wonder is very opening on its own.
I love the way you describe your experience. It's so in line with Ramana's self-inquiry, how he explains it. Just subject turning onto itself. So rather than your mind being extroverted, it's more introverted. And there's such a huge difference in how you show up when you explain the struggle versus the surrender and finding out who's the one that's struggling. I mean, you talked about tenderness. I love how you said tickle of tenderness. But it's more than just the words you're using. I can feel it from you. Your energy changes.
It's a very noticeable difference.
And also, what I love is that you said you have choice. So you're not a victim. You actually are consciously investigating your own internal reaction to something and choosing to be free.
Recognizing that freedom is already here. It's not even mine. The idea that I'm free is true, but it's a paradox because freedom isn't mine. Freedom is here. Freedom is everywhere. And I don't mean that in a to downplay experiences where it may really seem like it isn't. I just mean that that's what I'm in contact with right here in terms of internal choice.
It's amazing because it means that you don't have to do anything to get anything. It's already here.
Yes. And there's something also about doing less. putting everything down, being willing to expose vulnerability that is tenderness, open-hearted tenderness.
It's truly loving to be willing to expose whatever is coming up for yourself, saying yes to it, letting it be here. It's very touching.
I wonder if I can ask you, we started talking about how this is about find the source of the mind. And what I notice in this experience I'm sharing, it really feels like it's so much in the body. Is that the same in your experience, or for you, is it something more mental?
At first, it starts mental because it's very thought based and it's examining the thoughts which show up in my mind, in my head. But once they start to dissipate, then it sinks deeper. I feel it really deeper in my body. And then even that experience changes because it's like once everything gets quieter and more open and more spacious, then it's like this idea of even having a body dissolves. And it feels like there's just this open vastness that is beyond my mind, beyond my body. It's immeasurable.
Is this the answer to the question, who is the one who is thinking, who is trying to figure out?
It's my direct discovery. Just nothing. There's nothing. And I love how you said it takes not knowing. You can't go in already knowing the answer because then there's someone who knows something. You have to actually be willing to be so curious. And then it comes with this like beautiful freshness. It feels like experiencing life for the very first time. And it's blissful.
And what does it take to experience this? What does it cost for you?
Well, for me, there's such an impulse to grab the next thought. And I would say that the Enneagram has been really helpful for me in learning my own tendencies of my mind and my egoic patterns. There's a lot there about wanting to know about future planning, the next thing that'll give me pleasure, and just having this sense of control through having a sense of self who knows what's going on. This is the five fixation, if you're familiar with the Enneagram. And so you asked what it takes, and it takes not touching that next thought, that next desire. And it's really challenging because it does come with fear. And it comes with this lifetime of momentum of swinging from thought to thought to thought to thought. And I get a sense of pleasure just out of thinking.
I feel that's really universal. This, you described your unique experience of control by thinking and getting pleasure with the thoughts. And I feel that's really universal. Wanting to control by having some internal relationship to something that's made up, actually.
Yeah. And to take it back to Ramana and just how he describes it, he says most people are focused on objects. There's this I who's focused on something else. And so his whole explanation of inquiry is just focusing on the subject instead. Who's the I that is focused on all these objects? And there's such a simplicity in that that I've really resonated with.
Hmm. It's like it takes everything away, everything imagined away.
That's right. Sometimes I refer to it as a rug pull. Feels like the rug is being pulled from under me, and then it's just like this falling.
Yeah, and then the hierarchy of the outside world that we organize and understand and make sense of and try to control and all of this. relate to. It's pulled out. It's a beautiful question, really. Who am I with no outside world to define me, with no seeming outside world?
So I'd love to hear also what is your, biggest challenge in this? Same question that you asked me, but to yourself, what does it take?
Well, I mean, those are kind of two questions. What does it take? There's a sense of nothing, but that isn't quite it. It takes quiet. My biggest challenge is urgency. There's like, even as we're experiencing now, like I'm dropping into this state of being myself, very open. And I'm aware that what comes up is like, yeah, there's a flutter of attention on something needs to happen after this. And there's like worry about time and concerns about really meeting the needs of the physical body in a certain way at a certain time. I would use the word obsession. And there's like a fire about this urgency, like something needs to happen and I need to be here to take care of it. And that's a summary of a pattern that shows up in a lot of ways. And yeah, I must admit the urgency is painful and also so satisfying. It's like there's, I have to catch myself in really wanting to take on this urgency and put it into every cell of my physical body and follow through on it and getting everything done and getting everything right and taking care of things in such a way. It is also about control, controlling the world, controlling myself. So the challenge is to see the tastiness of control and this constant attachment to having and getting and needing control. And again, reflecting on, what is my relationship to this? Who am I? What am I trying to get? Is it working? Does it give me what I want? And in telling the truth about all of this, yeah, so something becomes more transparent. There's a natural in exposing that this is happening, and I could have this choice to really squeeze around it. There's also awareness of these other options. And yeah, there's a way, it's like a ruthlessness to expose that this uptight satisfaction is really not what I want. And so to open my hands and let it go in service of what I do really want, which is clear also, is very clear. Quiet, peace, tenderness, tickle, all of this. That's what it costs. Giving up control, giving up being right, giving up knowing, being able to know, giving up being the one who's going to get something outside myself. And when I put it that way, it sounds like a big cost. It's like, whew, that's a lot to give up. And really, it's actually simpler. It's about giving up the attachment to getting that. It's like before all of this, there's someone who wants to get something to fix something internally. And what that someone is trying to fix is tenderness. I don't need to fix tenderness, actually. And in that, everything can stop on its own. It becomes very sweet and quiet and natural.
So really, it's about giving up what you're attached to And you spoke about both the cost and the benefit of those attachments and this discovery about what you really want.
Yeah. It's almost like a dopamine hit, like really following through on that desire for attachment. It really is. There's like a very physiological inflation that seems to feel good, but it doesn't really feel good. And it costs me my life.
That telling the truth is the key because it's so easy to see what the cost is of identifying with this sense of self, this ego. It causes so much suffering, of course, but you also get something out of it. That's why you do it. And so you have to be honest about that.
Yeah, it's a kind of disarming. Telling the truth to myself is a way of letting down my guard and going in the direction of who is this one who's guarding in the first place and what's being guarded and what could happen if I stopped.
We've come full circle back to who is this one?
Who am I?
Yes, I love Ramana's teaching.
We're so lucky. I feel very lucky to have made contact with this lineage from Ramana Maharshi and this question, who am I?
Yeah, I feel so much gratitude and just so much love. So thank you for having this conversation with me. And I really look forward to the next one.
Yes. I'm so grateful to talk about it with you, Jonas. Let's see where our conversation goes next.
Yeah, lots of love to you.
And you too.